The Himyarite Kingdom, or Himyar, historically referred to as the Himyarite Kingdom by the Greeks and the Romans, was a kingdom in ancient Yemen. Established in 110 BCE, it took as its capital the modern-day city of Sana'a after the ancient city of Zafar. The kingdom conquered neighboring Saba in c. 25 BCE, Qatarban in c. 200 CE, and Hadram at c. 300 CE. Its political fortunes relative to Saba changed frequently until it finally conquered the Sabaean kingdom around 280 CE. Himyar then endured until it finally fell to Christian invaders in 525 CE. History. The Himyarite Kingdom was the dominant polity in Arabia until 525. Its economy was based on agriculture, and foreign trade centered on the export of frankincense and myrrh. For many years, the kingdom was also the major intermediary linking East Africa and the Mediterranean world. This trade largely consisted of exporting ivory from Africa to be sold in the Roman Empire. Ships from Himyar regularly traveled the East African coast, and the state also exerted a large amount of influence, both cultural, religious and political, to the trading cities of East Africa, whilst the cities of East Africa remained independent. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea describes the trading empire of Himyar and its ruler Charabael, who is said to have been on friendly terms with Rome. 23. And after 9 days more there is Safar, the metropolis, in which lives Charabael, lawful king of 2 tribes, the Homerites and those living next to them, called the Sabites, through continual embassies and gifts. He is a friend of the emperors. Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, paragraph 23. Early period. During this period, the kingdom of Himyar conquered the kingdoms of Saba and Qatarban and took Raidan, Zafar for its capital, instead of Marib. In the early 2nd century CE, Saba and Qatarban split from the kingdom of Himyar, yet in a few decades, Qatarban was conquered by Hadramaut, whereas Saba was finally conquered by Himyar in the late 3rd century CE. Zafar's ruins still lie on Mudawa mountain near the town of Yarim. During this period, they began to decline and fall. Their trade failed to a very great extent, firstly, because of the Nabatean domain over the north of Hejaz, secondly, because of the Roman superiority over the naval trade routes after the Roman conquest of Egypt, Syria and the north of Hejaz, and thirdly, because of intertribal warfare. Thanks to the 3 above-mentioned factors, families of Khatin were disunited and scattered about all over Arabia. From 300 until the advent of Islam in Yemen, the Himyarite kings appear to have abandoned polytheism and converted to Judaism around the year 380. Several decades after the conversion of the Ethiopian kingdom of Aksum to Christianity, though no changes occurred in its script or calendar or language. This date marks the end of an era in which numerous inscriptions record the names and deeds of kings, and dedicate buildings to local and major gods. From around the 380s, temples were abandoned, and dedications to the old god ceased, instead being given to Ramanan, the Lord of Heaven, or Lord of Heaven and Earth. The political context for this conversion was the position of Arabia between the competing empires of Christian Byzantium and Zoroastrian Persia. Neutrality, and good trade relations with both empires, was essential to the prosperity of the Arabian trade routes. Scholars speculate that the choice of Judaism may have been an attempt at maintaining neutrality. One of the first Jewish kings, Tubar Abu Kariba Asad, reportedly converted following a military expedition into northern Arabia in an effort to eliminate Byzantine influence. The Byzantine emperors had long eyed the Arabian Peninsula as a region in which to extend their influence, thereby to control the lucrative spice trade and the route to India, without actually staging a conquest of the region. The Byzantines hoped to establish a protectorate over the pagan Arabs by converting them to Christianity. The cross would then bear commercial advantages as it did in Ethiopia. The Byzantines had made some progress in northern Arabia but had met with little success in Himyar. Abu Kariba's forces reached Yathrib meeting no resistance and not expecting any treachery from the inhabitants. They passed through the city, leaving a son of the king behind as governor. Scarcely had Abu Kariba proceeded farther, when he received news that the people of Yathrib had killed his son. Smitten with grief, he turned back in order to wreak bloody vengeance on the city. After cutting down the palm trees from which the inhabitants derived their main income, Abu Kariba laid siege to the city. The Jews of Yathrib fought side by side with pagan fellow inhabitants to defend their town and harried the besiegers with sudden sallies. During the siege, Abu Kariba fell severely ill. Two Jewish scholars in Yathrib, Ka'ab and Asad by name, hearing of their enemy's misfortune, called on the king in his camp, and used their knowledge of medicine to restore him to health. While attending the king, they pleaded with him to lift the siege and make peace. The Sage's appeal is said to have persuaded Abu Kariba. He called off his attack and also embraced Judaism along with his entire army. At his insistence, the two Jewish savants accompanied the Himyarite king back to his capital, where he demanded that all his people convert to Judaism. Initially, there was great resistance, but after an ordeal had justified the king's demand and confirmed the truth of the Jewish faith, many Himyarites embraced Judaism. Such conversions, by ordeal, were not uncommon in Arabia. Some historians argue that the conversions occurred not due to political motivations, but because Judaism, by its philosophical, simplistic and austere nature, was attractive to the nature of the Semitic people. Abu Kariba's warlike nature prevented him from maintaining peace and prompted him to engage in bold enterprises. It is uncertain how he met to his death, although some scholars believe that his own soldiers, worn out by constant campaigning, killed him. He left 3 sons, Asan, Amru, and Zora, all of whom were minors at the time. After Abu Kariba's demise, a pagan named Dushantir seized the throne. In the reign of Subabi-il-Yaakov, the son of Abu Karib-Asad, a certain Azkir, a Christian missionary from Najran, was put to death after he had erected a chapel with a cross. Christian sources interpret the event as a martyrdom at Jewish hands. The site for his execution, Najran, being said to have been chosen on the advice of a rabbi, but indigenous sources do not mention persecutions on the grounds of faith, and it may have been merely to deter the extension of Byzantine influence. The first Aksumite invasion took place sometime in the 5th century and was triggered by the murder of some Byzantine merchants. 2 Christian sources, including the Zuchnine Chronicle, once attributed to Dionysius I el-Maharoyo, which was written over 3 centuries later. The Himyarite king motivated the killings by stating, "This is because in the countries of the Romans the Christians wickedly harass the Jews who live in their countries and kill many of them. Therefore I am putting these men to death." In retaliation, the Aksumites invaded the land and thereafter established a bishopric and built Christian churches in Zafar. The Jewish monarchy in Himyar continued for several decades, with one interruption. It finally ended with the reign of Yusuf, known as Dunuwas, who in 523 attacked the Christian population of Najran. By the year 500, on the eve of the regency of Marthadialan Yanuf, the kingdom of Himyar exercised control over much of the Arabian Peninsula. It was during his reign that the Himyarite Kingdom began to become a tributary state of Aksum, the process concluding by the time of the reign of Mardukari Biafra, a Christian appointed by the Aksumites. A coup d'état ensued, with Dunuwas, who had attempted to overthrow the dynasty several years earlier, assuming authority after killing the Aksumite garrison in Zafar. He then proceeded to engage the Ethiopian guards, and their Christian allies in the Tihama coastal lowlands facing Abyssinia. After taking the port of Mukawand, where he burnt down the local church, and advanced south as far as the fortress of Madaban overlooking the Bab el-Mandeb, where he expected Caleb el-Asbahi to land his fleet. The campaign eventually killed between 11,500 and 14,000, and took a similar number of prisoners. Makawin became his base, while he dispatched one of his generals, a Jewish prince by the name of Shera'iak Buldu Yazan, against Najrin, a predominantly Christian oasis, with a good number of Jews, which had supported with troops his earlier rebellion, but refused to recognize his authority after the massacre of the Aksumite garrison. The general blocked the caravan route connecting Najrin with eastern Arabia. Ancestral divisions of Himyar. The most famous of whose septs were Zaid al-Jamhur, Banu Kudarar and Sakasak. Karlin. The most famous of whose septs were Hamdan, Azd, Anmar, Ayy Midhij, Kindar, Lak Judam. Karlan septs emigrated from Yemen to dwell in the different parts of the Arabian Peninsula prior to the Great Flood, due to the failure of trade under the Roman pressure and domain on both sea and land trade routes following Roman occupation of Egypt and Syria. Naturally enough, the competition between Karlin and Himyar led to the evacuation of the first and the settlement of the second in Yemen. The emigrating septs of Karlin can be divided into four groups. Azd, who, under the leadership of Imran bin Amr Muzakbar, wandered into Yemen, sent pioneers and finally headed northwards. Details of their emigration can be summed up as follows. Thalaba bin Amr left his tribe Al-Azd for ridges and dwelt between Thalabiyar and Dhiqar. When he gained strength, he headed for Medina where he stayed. Of his Cedar Aws and Khazraj, sons of Harita bin Thalaba, Harita bin Amr, known as Khuzara, wandered with his people in Hijaz until they came to Ma'arazona Zarin. They conquered the Aram, and settled in Makkah after having driven away its people. The tribe of Juram, Japhna bin Amr and his family, headed for Syria where he settled and initiated the kingdom of Ghassan, who was so named after a spring of water, in Hijaz, where they stopped on their way to Syria. Lak and Judam, of whom was Nasr bin Rabi'ah, father of Manadara, kings of Hira. Banu Ayy, who also emigrated northwards to settle by the so-called Adra and Salma mountains, which were consequently named as Tai Mountains. The tribe later became the tribe of Shammah. Kindar, who dwelt in Bahrain but were expelled to Hadramaut and Najd, where they instituted a powerful government but not for long, for the whole tribe soon faded away. Another tribe of Himyar, known as Banu Kudarar, also left Yemen and dwelt in Samawar on the borders of Iraq. However, the majority of the Himyar Christian royalty migrated into Jordan, Al-Karak, where initially they were known as Banu Himyar. They later on moved to central Jordan to settle in Madaba under the family name of Al-Hamaneh. Language. It is a matter of debate whether the Himyarite language was spoken in the southwestern Arabian Peninsula until the 10th century. Kings of Saba and Himyar. Bibliography. Alessandro de Maigret. Arabia Felix. Translated Rebecca Thompson. London. Stacey International. 2002. ISBN 1-900988-07-0. Andrei Korotayev. Ancient Yemen. Oxford. Oxford University Press, 1995. ISBN 0-19-922237-1. Andrei Korotayev. Pre-Islamic Yemen. Wiesbaden. Harrisowitz Verlag, 1996. ISBN 3-447-03679-6. Bafaki, A. L'unification du Yemen antique. La lutte entre Saba, Himyar et le Hadramot de Ieroi Masikli de l'Iari Chrétienne. Paris, 1990. Paul Ewell, Himyar late antique Yemen, Die Spatentykim Jemen, Eichwald, 2007, ISBN 9783929290356. Paul Ewell, Zafar, the capital of the ancient Himyarite Empire rediscovered. Germain Report 36, 2005, 22-29. Paul Ewell, Late Antique Arabia Afar, capital of Imyar, rehabilitation of a decadent society. Excavations of the Ruprecht Karls-Universität Heidelberg 1998-2010 in the highlands of the Yemen. Abhandlungen Deutscher Orientgesellschaft, Volume 29 Wiesbaden 2013, ISSN 0417-2442, ISBN 978-3-447-06935-9. Joseph Adler, The Jewish Kingdom of Himyar, Its Rise and Fall, Midstream, May, June 2000, Volume XXXXVR, No. 4, R. Stuparich P. Ewell, Himyarite Period Bronze Sculptural Groups from the Yemenite Highlands, in A. Sedov, Arabian and Islamic Studies, a collection of papers in honor of Mikhail Borishovich Piotrovsky on the occasion of his 70th birthday. Moscow, 2014, 338-67. ISBN 978-5-903417-63-6.